A Geca Guide to Sustainable Steel. One of our standards is for steel and steel products. Let's learn more. Steel has lots of uses and impacts on our everyday living. Did you know that steel is a vital material not only for built environment, but also for vehicles, art, medicine, and information technology? The unique physical properties of steel allow it to be reused or recycled without loss of quality. However, like all materials, steel can pose a significant environmental, health, and social burden across its entire life cycle. It's also crucial that steel and steel products perform as intended. When using steel, we need to ensure that during its production, use, and disposal, we minimize its impact on the environment and human health, the people making the products, while still maintaining its quality. That is why we, at Geca, have created the Steel and Steel Products Standard to define sustainable performance benchmarks for steel and steel products throughout their entire life cycle. When a product is certified against Geca's Steel and Steel Products Standard, you can be sure that it has been assessed to meet environmental, human health, social impact criteria, and has been proven to be fit for purpose. Geca certification removes doubt and confusion and makes identifying environmentally and socially preferable products easier. Let's start by looking at some of the environmental impacts and what type of criteria we have put in our standards to address them. Unsustainable practices in the extraction of raw materials can result in a wide range of environmental issues. For example, threatening of biodiversity in adjacent areas, erosion in coastal areas and riverbanks, or pollution of waterways. To ensure sustainable practices in the extraction of raw materials, virgin mines and quarried raw materials must come from operations with environmental management plans. This includes a documented rehabilitation program, an environmental management system per ISO 14001-2015, and community engagement or cultural heritage plans. To ensure sustainable practices in the reuse of steel, manufacturers using post-consumer scrap must implement procedures to exclude feedstocks containing undesirable materials, including radioactive materials and polychlorinated biphenyls. Steel manufacturing is a major contributor to worldwide carbon emissions. On average for 2018, 1.85 tonnes of CO2 were emitted for every tonne of steel produced. The steel industry generates between 7 and 9% of direct emissions from the global use of fossil fuel. Our standard places clear restrictions on carbon emissions, helping the industry to reduce its impact. The steelmaker must also be a member of the World Steel Association's Climate Action Programme. Our standard also recognises certification under the current version of the Responsible Steel Standard. Steel manufacturing processes can result in the emission of significant amounts of pollutants, including dioxins, polychlorinated biphenyls, nitrogen oxides, sulfur oxides, and particle matter. High levels of nitrogen dioxide are harmful to vegetation, damaging foliage, decreasing growth, or reducing crop yields. Nitrogen oxides and sulfur dioxide can also react with substances in the atmosphere to form acid rain. Polychlorinated biphenyls are a group of harmful organic pollutants and can bioaccumulate through the food chain. Off gases must be captured to the maximum extent possible and directed to a treatment system to control particle matter. Emissions of dioxins, polychlorinated biphenyls, nitrogen oxides, and sulfur dioxide must be measured and reported at least annually. The steel manufacturer must also implement a dust management plan covering all areas of the mill operation. Waste management discharge of wastewater and damaging substances can threaten the health of aquatic ecosystems. To stop this from happening, the steel mills, rolling mills, and finishing lines must have effective procedures and systems, including an annual improvement plan to minimize emissions of oil and grease, suspended solids, and metals and wastewater discharged to the natural environment. Any discharges from contaminants from the manufacturing site must be proven to have an environmentally sustainable level of impact. The manufacturer must also implement systems to recover wastewater sludges and sediments. They then must report on how they reuse this or demonstrate that they are disposed to an appropriate location. The manufacturer must have systems or initiatives in place to recycle and reuse water, and the electric arc furnace must use a closed-loop water cooling system. Overconsumption of resources and generation of waste can have a significant impact on the environment. Manufacturers must calculate and report on the overall material efficiency of the steelmaking site. This aligns with the World Steel Association's goal for all raw materials to be used to their full capacity, ensuring zero waste from steelmaking. Inefficient use of packaging can result in greater transportation needs, natural resource depletion, and increased burden on landfills. Product packaging should be as efficient and recyclable as possible across the product's life cycle. It is also important that the coating used on the steel does not make the product unsuitable for recycling in steel mills. We require that packaging must contain recycled material or be derived from plant-based materials. The manufacturer must also supply evidence that a steel mill can take back and recycle the steel product. Certain substances or compound classes, including carcinogens, have been identified as particularly harmful to human health. Toxic heavy metals and their compounds such as mercury, arsenic, selenium, cobalt, tin, and antimony are also detrimental to the health of manufacturing staff and users of the finished product. Volatile organic compounds are also present in many products. They can trigger allergic reactions, headaches, eye irritation, and asthma problems. Our standard states that no known endocrine distributors, carcinogens, mutagens, or teratogens are allowed. All substances of very high concern listed on the REACH candidate list are banned, and only minimum VOC content is allowed in coatings. Top coats and paints used for coating steel products must meet all requirements to be classified as non-hazardous or be licensed under a current Geca certification. Manufacturers must implement effective procedures for the appropriate storage and handling of raw materials, including steel scrap, solid waste, and environmentally hazardous materials. Exploitation can occur in many ways, such as unsafe work conditions or little to no pay. Modern slavery is a term used to cover a range of unethical practices, including slavery, human trafficking, child labour, and forced labour. The 2016 Global Slavery Index showed that there are over 45.8 million people across 167 countries in some form of modern slavery. We require that an annual modern slavery statement in alignment with the Australian Modern Slavery Act 2018 be published. This includes manufacturers of any size and is not restricted to any annual revenue threshold. If risks are identified in the report, they will have to be addressed in the next annual report, and improvements will have to be documented. We also require evidence of workplace safety, fair pay, and equal opportunity. The manufacturer must also show compliance to all lawful conduct. To demonstrate conformance, Geca standard requires evidence of a certified ISO 14001 eco-management and audit scheme or equivalent environmental management system in place, a signed declaration from an executive officer of the organisation stating compliance to an environmental legislation and government orders, as well as a declaration of any breaches of environmental legislation or permits. A legal register listing applicable environmental legislation in or as an attachment to this declaration. Sample payslips, examples of workplace agreements, a copy of workplace health and safety policies and procedures, a copy of employee induction records, training records, meeting records, and risk assessments, or current ISO 45001-2018, Australian Standard or New Zealand Standard 4801 or equivalent certification, or third-party certification stating compliance to legislation. Corrective action plans following a guilty verdict if applicable, and more. Manufacturers can make false or misleading claims about their environmental performance, which can create consumer confusion or greenwash in markets. We need to see evidence that all environmental claims about a product undergoing certification are true and substantiated. On top of all these essential environmental, health, and social criteria, the product must also be fit for purpose. That is, it must do what the manufacturer claims it does. There's no use having a product if it doesn't deliver on its promise. To become certified, the product must meet or exceed the requirements of the relevant Australian standards or equivalent international standard. There are many products covered by the standard, including slabs, plates, steel wire, and many more. Other environmentally innovative steel products that do not fit the above categories may be considered for certification, provided the product fulfills the requirements of any relative sections of the standard. Other product categories may be added at a later date. This standard does not apply to products that incorporate non-steel elements. Procurement teams have a big role to play in shifting the steel market towards sustainability practices. When creating requests for tenders and in developing contracts, specifying Geca certification for steel is an easy way to prompt the steel market to reassess its manufacturing and work towards best practice. This is beneficial for procurement teams as it is an easy way to ensure your sustainability targets or goals are addressed. Once a steel product has been Geca certified, your company can use Geca's eco-label mark on the certified product to show consumers and procurement teams that you are a sustainability leader in the steel sector. Sustainability is becoming increasingly important, particularly for the public sector, and Geca's eco-label mark makes it easier to identify this leadership. At Geca, we have made each of our standards freely available for you to download. You can also visit our website to submit an application form to get an obligation-free quote from our third-party assurance providers. We would love to hear from you. Contact us for further information on how we can help. You can also join the conversation online across our social channels.